things and have them all the time. And of course, um, I step back though, and I don't want to ascribe any kind of overarching theory or meaning to them because they could just be by chance, right? And so Nietzsche, and so I've been thinking about this for a very long time. And it wasn't the first time I picked up a book by Nietzsche, because a lot of my friends wanted me to like Nietzsche. They would try, they gave me books and they'd say, read this, you're gonna love Nietzsche. And I would start to read it and I hated his philosophy. I was like, oh, this guy's
What about his
terrible.
philosophy did you hate?
He seemed really arrogant and he was very sexist and racist. And I really didn't want to fill my head with that kind of philosophy. So I didn't think he was really that interesting. And so it never stuck, right? So one day, it was on New Year's Eve, and I was not out there partying with everyone, but I could hear everyone partying. And I decided to try to get some sleep, so I went to bed. And at midnight, everybody was partying so much. I heard everything. I woke up. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do now? And I saw this book by Nietzsche by the bed. So I picked it up and I opened it up randomly. And I opened it up, by the way, it was the gay science. And I opened it up to, I think it was Aphorism 273, but it was a book two, which was Saint January, Sanctus Januarius. It was about the same. And I was like, okay, it's like the January. It was January 1st. So I thought that's a weird kind of coincidence. And I opened it up. And it was basically, he said, today's New Year's. And I was like, it is New Year's, and I thought it was really interesting. He was declaring his philosophy of amor fati, which is the love of one's fate. So when you're disgusted by life and life gives you all these terrible things, just look away. Like, don't try to fight it. Just look away from it into something different and more beautiful. And so that was that was some kind of revelation to him. He was imparting that. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I like that. And I turned the page, and basically I thought, what a cool synchronicity, right? I really kind of, if the feel of the synchronicity was really intense, the next aphorism, the very next page, was basically an argument against ascribing meaning to synchronicities. It was beautiful. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever read. I was like, okay. Like, I was just about really interesting. And it also made me really think about synchronicities, like what's going on with these things. And so it seems like everything has this personal meaning. Something, even a terrible thing happens, but it happened the very best. Don't think that it's any kind of God that's leading you on your way. It's the most beautiful. It's the just like Plato's gave structural for Western society. I think that it's structural for being human, and it's part of what makes being human fun and interesting. But scientists are doing this too. Scientists are having some pretty intense synchronicities like that. So I think it might have to do with learning or being open to being taught by your environment, life, something like that. I mean, I'm still, to tell you the truth, I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Do you think that this whole thing that's going on right now with technology and like ChatGPT and UFOs, do you think that this is becoming like a new religion for Western society?
No, I don't think it's becoming a new religion. I think that people are, there's a religiosity. A religion is something pretty to the beginning and the end. There's usually associated with it, like, figurehead. And it's an ongoing kind of formation that has dominated with it. So what I see right now, there's what I would call a religiosity, and this is what I identify as a UFO thing too, because there are religions that focus and emphasize UFOs. Okay, so like the nation was, it's found, if there's a belief they're part of the mothership, they're little.
Really?
Yeah. This is a nation of Islam. So this is a religion. But what I see right now is this pervasive belief in UFOs kind of on the rise, giving credence by the U.S. government, basically saying, the Pentagon report, and a lot of the media associated with it. And this is kind of this, a lot of times we can't prove that religious things exist. We base it on testimony, and that's very similar to what happens with UFOs, with testimony and things like that. So I see this kind of as an effect of technology, the decentralization of.
What do you think of the whole Bob Lazar?
Okay, so I don't have it out there. Obviously, he himself has been discredited by a lot of people. I also know people who are even more like associated with some programs that interface with phenomena and do work in that regard, are super scientific. And
People that do like back engineering stuff.
Well, they say they do. I can't say whether they do or not. I don't know, but they claim to.
Okay.
And they believe him, and they say
They believe it.
Yeah, and they say that they believe that they've said that he's now. This is like stuff I can't confirm. So okay. So, but they say so. It's really confusing to me too, just like for everyone else. But one piece of information that I think isn't out there is that what they said was that if this information is going to come out, it's not going to come out through someone like with a PhD telling you this. It's going to come out through these people who can be completely discredited if you need to.
Think about him as like if he is this incredible whistleblower, right? Blowing the whistle on one of the government's most secret programs in the history of the government, right? Like how is he still getting like a contract with this company and doing all this crazy work? And think of like some of the whistleblowers of our modern time. They're not still working with the government and living freely in the United States.
I know.
That's one of the perplexing things to me.
And for me to have people on this side who are so invested in the UFO thing for years and years and years, like their whole lives, and scientists adamantly against it, and then people on this side who have the same credentials, the same investment of time, having the forward. It makes it crazy.
Yeah, it's so polarizing.
Yeah.
And why hasn't he actually done like a real debate, like with a scientist or with? I mean, he's done the public-facing stuff.
Yeah, I don't think he would keep up with the scientists. I mean, excuse me, but it's up to some.
You don't think he keep up with them?
No. I mean, they're going to be asking him specific kinds of questions, and I don't think he's able to. Or maybe he's just, there are clips of him saying he wished he never came out to talk about it. So maybe he's just sick of all the media attention.
Why wouldn't he not want to? Why wouldn't he be able to keep up with some of the scientists? Like if he was one of them, like it seems like
people who are, okay, so let's take Tyler. Tyler graduated from college barely, but yeah, but has like more than 45 patents. And like, so a lot of these people who are geniuses, they're very specifically geniuses and they're downloading, but they don't have the infrastructure in their heads from years and years at MIT or something like that. They're like, I don't know what you call them, local geniuses. They're geniuses in this one specific thing.
Right. What was he specifically good at?
Okay, so he basically created the basis for a lot of biotechnologies that were used in different kinds of things. And he created companies that are sold on NASDAQ. Stuff like that.
And this was all done like privately without being involved, or were these just?
No, he created these things. He created the patents for them, and some of them he worked with. He flew his first big thing that he created that was a biotechnology was an experiment that he flew on one of the space shuttles because it had to be done like zero gravity in space, and it was but that was actually taken from the plane, and so he was mad about that. So he quit the program for a while, and he went private and stuff on his own. So, yeah, so then he worked with five companies to create these companies. And then he was recruited back into the space program.
Wow. Did he ever go into space?
Yeah, he was like stars, I don't know, he was like really high up, like, because he would go up there in order to, well, I don't know exactly what he was doing. He didn't really talk about it, I read it. But no, he was a pilot, but he never went to space. But he was the person who would help astronauts with stuff, and mission control and stuff like that.
And there was also there was a study by one of the women you interviewed based out of London who actually it was wild that the astronauts, the farther they got out into space, the more their brain changed, or the more their moral code changed.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, Dr. Ida Whiteley, she's at University College London, and she's a space psychologist, which I think she's positions because
Space psychology.
yeah, so she helps people in extreme environments, and space obviously. She's a pretty intense person, but yeah, so she argued astronauts and people. By the way, she's pretty. and worldwide movements and things like that. Religion is a very powerful force. So the academics and don't actually, like, I don't tell my students, but because I don't think it's helpful when we're learning about religion. I'm not advocating religion. But I personally yes. But it's not for like some of the best people in the field are atheists. So it's not being a minister or a priest or something like that. I actually did get a master's degree along with priests and foundation Jesuits. Jesuits spoke theology, which was affiliated with these persons and was part of the theological which is there's enough knowledge to understand that and then I went on to get a PhD at Syracuse University in medicine, which is a field of international system to study religion. A lot of studies religion, but a lot of them have personal study through my whole career until I was studying in India and I took my natural history studies. And we talked about knowledge for sure, but it's I take a method to study what those things. We don't have to believe. We allow them that and we'll go through and this is the subject of having people on my podcast, but not on Facebook. So I think that's important to know is that I'm not out here trying for any disclosure or whether or not the materials are actually real. I'm not studying the impacts that it has on populations of people. But
Your early childhood had anything to do with your interest in religion, religious studies? That was your childhood upbringing?
okay,
Sorry, that you got in and did your studies and your work at all influence your outlook for your life?
I think that people are impacted by how they were brought up and also what happens around them in culture. So of course I'm not exempt from that. That said, I didn't grow up in a particularly religious household. My parents were from California, and it was also culture and where religious beliefs and things like that. So my parents were pretty eclectic. My father was Irish Roman, my mother was pretty secular Jewish, and they were interested in a lot of things too. So we did have a library, books about life and ethics, and I was very interested in religion and philosophy, and I did make the decision to study this. So yeah, I was really interested in how communities would shift their lives, and I was interested in why. But I also have to understand that with graduate school in the late 70s, which was the time period of the dot-com. And so I'm in California, technology is just kind of flourishing at this time, and I'm seeing that the infrastructure is changing the way people believe in religion. And so the digital infrastructure, and especially media technology like Star Wars and things like that, where people are beginning to have these, we'll call them almost like mystical beliefs about things like the course of living. And it was impacting their religious beliefs. And so when I went to school, not only did I study ancient texts about different religions, but I also studied the ways in which people took their own beliefs and they incorporated, a very major project that culminated in a book about the Catholic doctrine of purgatory, which is an afterlife destination for souls who are fighting to heaven. That are dead. Of reports of aeroplane. So I had these, and I knew that they were really interesting, but I didn't quite make the connection. I thought, what is this about? So I finished my book. My book is in test, and I launched the next book. But I'm thinking next month it's going to be about that stuff. It's going to be about Catholic Bishop, who was one of the first Catholic bishops in the States. And I showed a friend of mine this kind of reports, and he looked through the reports, and he said, these are the scientists that are preparing to do both. And I thought it was silly because I was a person who it was a coincidence that there was a conference in my town for people who are experiencers with experiencers. So I went for that, and I heard that saw for like a night that I had cattle other chapters at the time, I knew Jeff Michael. He's a professor at Rice University. And I posted and said, have you seen this? And he at first said no. And then I took some of the stuff that I had translated and sent. So we're talking about social media. Other things that happened in John Knoxville. He was blown away. And that was the beginning of my writing about UFOs and looking at modern day reports of UFOs. And honestly, when I study UFOs, I thought it was going to be a natural progression of
Look at this part.
So I found myself in an environment that was absolutely completely
Friction, social
Their experiences were an exact match of what you're reading.
by the way, I'm a practicing doctor. So if you look at Teresa Castillo, she's an experience that she was an experience. I wish she deserved the time frame when that was last. So it's not like she was not but she did write it. And so she had this experience where she was basically pregnant, and I took her outside. She saw something that she didn't really understand. And it was about 3 and she said it was very strange. And she said it was she was confused by it because when she saw angels prior to this interview with the manager, she made the distinction. This was not an angel in her imagination, but this was an actual flesh thing. She saw it. So she was confused. She didn't know what kind of angel it was. She said it must be a cherub. That's what she said. In Catholic history, it's a cherub is given kind of little angel or childlike. So she, but you can tell that she wasn't even sure it was that. And so this was known by reading her book from description of the event because it's a very representative encounter in Catholic history. And there's a very famous statue in Rome where and you see her in this angel and it has a door. You know how John Mack talks about it? So apparently this little angel creature examines and this was amazing because it was just very strange. Well, okay. So you have to understand the translation from that time period. So this is super cool. So when I say I'm using the word examine, but probably should not have used that word. It basically said they took this chart and flexed it into a word. It was something that I didn't expect to see. So this would be an example, but there were many more examples that weren't the same as the one that Catholic experienced. But there were a lot of examples that had so they're not things. So they're reading and they're living on yeah, I get a lot of I think I took some of the people that I was really scientists and was studying this too and spoke with them. It seems really interesting. Yeah, pretty quickly. So, okay, so he reached out to me, and you know, said that he was interested in this field, and he was working with this field, and wanted to know why. And so he was trying that. It's very so it took me about a year and a half to get so yeah, so immediately I met a lot of people. I met the people that you know all needed yeah, so for a person who didn't write UFOs or understanding history, I was a person. You know, this is really strange experience.
Welcome. How are you, Donnie? Donnie,
What is that? What is that?
what is what is it?
Look at bro's, bro, I can see bro's high electricity bill.
How's your day?
Yo, how's your bills going?
Really well, man.
And how did that alter or affect the trajectory of the research from now? Obviously, you were my experience and very present. But how did that experience going to that alleged crash site affect your mind and your thinking towards the program?
time this was in fire, which is a tool that technology. So this is like the modern evolution. That's how it's like the trauma. There's something more than this. And that's really what I was trying to do. So all of these writings are incredibly difficult. Feels like it's more than something really interesting is going on here. And I'm in the midst of it, and I have to write how I'm going to write about it. Because generally, the person in my school is going to write this up and still write it. They believe this, and they keep their instincts. But I felt like I couldn't keep them. So I was within myself. And so kind of as a journey in the power of heaven. So either the book itself is not black, even though it's not. It's a book that explores not just theory, but also like the interface of me, non-believer, even skeptical, going through this process, seeing people seeing how they're really twisted in it as much as people are doing normal everyday stuff. And this being kind of very returning point. And yeah, so I guess here's the second book. Continues the journey describing
How do you explain what's going on now, like in the public media, like the public-facing media, with like the on the force, the New York Times, classifying all these radar encounters where these Navy pilots are finding and pushing videos, not saying that it's not real. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation. There's a lot of energy that goes into muddying the waters. What is your take on how long it's been, like 6 years or whatever, that the U.S. is public facing? What I think that they're doing.
So again, if you go back to what I said, that's religion. And we see that in most of its traditional religions, big religions, Christianity is my field. And with that process of institutionalization, so this how they do that first. So you have those which Gnosticism is a form of Christianity that sprang up in the first 200 years. And there's different types of we call them grounded. People believe that Jesus, or the knowledge that Jesus had, is something that they experienced themselves, the Holy Spirit. It's more like an experiential experience. The way I talk about this is an experience, as I say, take a chocolate bar. Would you rather drill the chocolate bar by eating, or by feeding the ingredients like that? So it's an instant knowledge of it's not just stuff. So the Gnostic Church was like eradicated at that point, or it was Roman Catholic Church. So this is the type of thing that through institutionalization comes some precious graces, and so you can fully expect to find that's from looking at. And I said I didn't work in that company, so I was like, okay, we're institutionalizing this. And what are the voices that are being whispered and say carry out react attack? was another example. So they were basically they believed in rebellion, but there wasn't, so they couldn't do it. So James was basically saying, here's your name, this journalistation. The people who listen to he would always talk to parables and things like that. People who would spread the business. He's okay, not everyone listens. So he had a very specific message. And so he was basically part of these two. And his quality of life was son. Well, at the time, it was back and you think that they had these, students in their country installed. They had this recent growing laws in the colleges. That was actually their religion. So these are these quality of identifying these primary the son of God, against Caesar. Okay, so your part would be God is the so there's they had somewhat of various different so yes, it was competing.
And now they're making it mainstream. There's so blockbuster TV shows unfathomable. But that's the thing, that the government isn't necessarily talking about the religious side of it. They're talking about it as just technology or like
Yeah, so I think this is it that shifts this, makes it from the Christianity example. I would say that UFOs right now have this Christianity where there's institutionalization. But the one thing that's different is that whereas the other was focus on news, the Catholic the one who has access to the religion. It is interesting shift in that this didn't even be secular. Secular is not there's no but that contains because so I have secular. I think that's what like I said, I have no I don't care. I'm not sure if I believe the existence of this or that. I'm just doing my job, which is basically to see what I've seen and then make conclusions based on what I know the data. And so what I find is that the very people who are most immersed in the study of even the quote-unquote technology are having experiences that I would call religious-like experiences. And these are changing them and shifting them. They live really almost like monastic or ascetic lives. So this data, and well, let's just put it this way. I think since I'm included, that's what I see. So I think that the public-facing aspect of it, not including the data, I think that there are probably reasons for it. One of which is they probably just aren't trained. They don't know. They miss it. So here's an example. The recent James Bond film about the Brazil.
Yeah.
Okay, so like his son. Right. Yeah. So and I talked to him. I know I attended a conference. So tell me about the religious aspects. And so kind of time over a little bit of it, but yeah. However, this last video of James, yeah.
In Brazil, there was a crash landing, and apparently there was a going around town for a couple of days.
watch, mostly because to me what was bringing the framework of what I would call the secular idea of UFO as extraterrestrial crash lands, and then those who pose it up, and people are, yeah, intimidated and are being creepy, these kinds of things. So all those elements are there. But what's also there that what makes it creepiness generally is that this isn't a Catholic culture. And the people that first see the being, they're like, look at that being, it's not human. So they identify it, and also there's a war to demons as well. And part of that one is that they have a cloven feet, and they have a really terrible smell of sulfur. Those kinds of mentions, many times, they come up repeatedly in the video. And I'm thinking, if I ever see him again, I'll say, hey, you brought up a lot of the religious stuff, but of course he didn't see it because he's coming from a secular place. But a person trained in religious things is going to see that, or a Catholic is going to see that. Somebody who's very Christian, they're not going to listen.
Yeah, this kind of blew my mind. You mentioned the Clovis feet and the smell of sulfur. And this is, you're saying that this is talked about a lot in some of these Catholic texts.
Yes. So I'm not saying that that's what it is. I don't think they're the same kinds of things that they would say. They would say, they were but this is just one example.
It's a wild example, and like I said already, there's really not many documented cases of natural beings, right? Like the mostly you're seeing like blood discs. Some of the others, there's a whole rare instances where there's beings that are witnessed and people that have encountered these things like in the living room or like that, but there's never been a case where there's been multiple witnesses seeing anything that was actually taken by humans into captivity.
There are examples though from Catholic culture, like that one you mentioned herself, a Catholic, she sees a being, but she doesn't report a smell or anything like that, but it's more just like the beings that Michael John has, or the beings that escapes in West Ball or Zimbabwe, yeah. So,
There's an image of the thing. That's like a illustration done by somebody in Brazil.
There are 4 incontrovertible proofs that we didn't go to the moon.
yeah, all I can tell you is
We just proved the moon landing was fake. It was fake. If the rocks are fake, let us that shit. Say, you know what's on here? It's the crew of Apollo faking. I'm like, am I under arrest? They don't answer me. Am I free to go? They don't answer me. For some reason, the CIA is all over the world. The very next day, and so when I make my way back to Nashville, I know I've got this exotic American people for Sundays 6 times. That's how arrogant these people are. You made it clear to me that I'm correct, and good luck trying to prove it. That's not an 8-year-old question. That's my question. I don't know, but I think I know. We didn't go there. And that's the way it happened. And so the moon landing really is the poster child of conspiracy theories, right? Oh, they think the moon landing. The director of YouTube went before Congress, and her #1 example as to why they need to do censorship for people saying the moon landing is fake. And then when it dawns on you, after extensive research and a millionaire backing you who built rockets for NASA, who knows the moon missions are fake, and then when we'll get into it, I found concrete proof that they were indeed falsified. I just, wept quietly. It's so sad when you realize they actually did fake the moon landing. And more people are waking up to that. I saw before it began this clip of Joe Rogan, and I got a lot of positive feedback about that. I did Coast to Coast, I think 4 times. And after I did it the very first time, I got 2,000 emails in one day. And our film, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, which you can see for free at Simperl.com, it actually outsold Gladiator after doing the Coast to Coast interview. But of those 2,000 emails that I got, now this is about 25 years ago, 9 out of 10 of them were, how dare you say such a thing, multiple death threats. This lawsuit thing, right, with this YouTuber, that's all around the same time. I have a whole team, right? The business manager, this. This lawsuit thing, right, with this YouTuber, that's all around the same time. I have a whole team, right? You know, business manager, this entertainment manager, you got the morning, you got this. I have a whole bunch of people working on whatever issue they have with it. I couldn't tell you what's going on with it. I couldn't tell you when it's going to end. I know nothing about it. I don't associate with them anymore. I couldn't tell you. I could not. All right, guys. Today we're going straight to the receipts in this new lawsuit against Brendan Shaw because we have a bunch of Brendan's own text messages. If you've been following along, you already know Brendan's landed himself in legal hot water over his business dealings with Pure Spectrum CBD. But today I want to zero in on one specific part of this disaster, the private messages that show how quickly Brendan goes from confident business shark to blaming everyone else the second things fall apart. I'm also going to show you guys how this is a pattern of behavior all too familiar from this guy. As you saw in the intro just there, and as I've previously covered in multiple videos, Brendan sued a smaller YouTuber, Kyle Swindells, and lost. He was one of the channels that posted a video of Brendan giving his number out to another woman at an NFL party, and the way he dealt with that is from the very same playbook as his behavior in this lawsuit. And in my opinion, this is his most toxic character trait, and he simply cannot stop. Like I said, though, we've got the text, we've got a hilariously fucking desperate marketing email, and we've got another textbook example of Brendan trying to prop up his stand-up career using shortcuts, and then throwing his team under the bus when it all inevitably explodes in his face. This isn't about theory or speculation. This is Brendan's own words, lined up in black and white, showing exactly how his career strategy has worked for years. Rushing unprepared, overhype the product, panic when it flops, blame the team, rinse and repeat. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll see how this moron uses the same move, the blame game with zero accountability, showing up across everything Brendan does. Just a quick reminder though, these message filings lodged by Brendan Bell in Palm Beach, Florida, Brendan hasn't filed a defense yet, so he hasn't had a chance to his side of the story, which may end up being very different to the allegations made by the also, this is a not a criminal case. It's effectively a business deal and in no way represents a criminal prosecution of Brenda Shaw. If the plaintiff is successful, though, I imagine criminal charges will follow pretty quick. Let's rewind to May 25, 2019, the earliest text we've seen from this mess, and honestly, it's the most peak Brendan Shaw thing you'll hear all day. You'd be surprised as how the internet's roasting him, and Brendan's already spiraling. He texts Brady Bell, and just soak this up, guys. Hey boss, you're def one of the smarter people I know, so I'm reaching out to you. Please keep this between us. So, with last special coming out brings out a new reason for the haters to jump on me. Straight off the bat, keep this between us. Classic of a secrecy, followed by the immediate pity party. But it gets better. It's been brought to my attention these idiots created a campaign to shit on the special and are creating accounts and leaving awful reviews and one-star reviews on IMDb. First of all, IMDb is still spelled wrong. Consistency is the key here, guys. But more importantly, he's framing this like it's some grand coordinated conspiracy, when in reality, his special just bombed because he's literally the worst man to have ever attempted stand-up comedy in history. But Bubba's not done. Spoke with IMBD, they said the same thing happened to Amy Schumer and Kevin Hart. Only way to combat this is by having negative reviews and rankings. We can't shut this smear campaign down, even though it's just on IMBD, but still I hate feeling like these schmucks are winning. Absolute fucking gold. Brendan compares himself to Amy Schumer and Kevin Hart like he's the next breakout megastar getting attacked by trolls, rather than, a meathead trying to force his way into comedy. But the desperation's setting in. He hates feeling like these schmucks are winning, so naturally, it's time to cook up a database plan. Bill responds like a corporate hype man. First off, you are on top of a very high mountain, and all the sheep will always be yelling up at who's on top. Let me develop a strategy and plan. And Brendan, he's already spiraling harder. Fuck, this is great. Yeah, it's embarrassing to even confess it affects me. I couldn't sleep. Figured you would have an idea and not judge me. Weird position to be in. There it is. Full meltdown mode. Can't sleep. Worried about the internet haters. Desperately leaning on Pure Spectrum's database as the solution. And he even admits his comedy friends told him to ignore it. But other friends who are in comedy or TV just say don't pay attention to any of it. But does Brendan listen? Fuck no. He says, when it's a smear campaign against something I worked my ass for and it's a good product, the competitive side comes out. Worked his ass off, good product. Okay, Brendan, whatever helps you sleep at night, buddy. Oh, wait, never mind. You said you couldn't sleep. So at this point, the whole plan's already being formed here. Brendan's melting down, laying the groundwork to weaponize Pure Spectrum's customer database to combat the bad news. Forget reflecting on his set, forget fixing the material, it's straight to panic mode, database manipulation, and corporate-grade damage control. This guy's always taking shortcuts. I mean, fuck, what are we doing here, B? But sure enough, 3 days later, May 28, we get the now infamous follow-up text. What's the plan with the IMBD reviews? Should we just use the Pure Spectrum email list to be safe, my man? The same conversation escalated. Brendan's desperate. The plan's in motion. But what happened next is somehow even more redacted than those text messages. Let's talk about the email, because this thing is peak Bubba desperation disguised as marketing genius, and it aged about as well as Gringo Papi did. Shortly after Brendan's text suggesting they use the Pure Spectrum email list to be safe, this email lands in the inbox of thousands of CBD customers, people just looking for some relief from joint pain, anxiety, maybe a good night's sleep, unlike our boy Bubba. And instead, they get this. Let's show our support for Brendan. As you all know, my business partner, Brendan Shaw, debuted his comedy special on Showtime earlier this month. Today, I am asking our customers and the entire Fighter and the Kid army to help support this special. Follow the link, leave the kind of review Brendan deserves, but you'd be surprised, and you'll receive 50% off your entire Pure Spectrum order. Now, just let that in. You're minding your own business, waiting on your CV, being roped into the Great Job Reputation Damage Control campaign. And that one sentence, leave the kind of review Brendan deserves, is funnier than anything in the comedy special itself. They may as well just have said, please help us artificially boost this flaming pile of shit comedy special before the internet completely turns it into a massive meme. It's cringy, it's desperate, and more importantly, it's exactly what Brendan asked for. But as always, oh man, things got worse. Within days, Showtime catches wind of the promo, and according to Brendan's own texts, they're not happy. Suddenly, the man who was all in on the email spam is panicking. Here's the next message to Brady Bell. Email plan backfired, my man. Showtime just called me, not happy. Said we can't pay for positive reviews in their asset. Fuck you reckon, mate? Right on cue. The same fucking guy who suggested the database approved the blast and benefited from the promo is now pretending to be the victim of a rogue marketing team. It gets better. Brendan follows up with this deflection. This is seriously the best part of positive reviews. One text, full 180. It's no longer my idea. It's I wasn't aware. The team did it offer. When it looks good, he's front and center. When it backfires, shit. But somehow this story's still not done because the Comedy Central chapter is the cherry on top, or as Brendan would say, a real peaches to email disaster after Showtime calls him out, after Brendan throws Pierce the bus, after scrambling to cover his track, he would have learned his lesson. But no, this is Brendan Schultz we're talking about. Come on, guys, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Barely 3 weeks later, with you'd be surprised still the online backlash still going strong, Brendan's back at the Brady Bell. Here's what he sends on June 14, 2019. Yo, have an idea. Tell me what you think. Just to combat the hate we got from the Showtime special, maybe we can blast out the entire email list by Comedy Central piece on YouTube. No offer or discount, but just so it shows the support in the same way. Does that make sense? Well, would you look at that? Pure redacted logic right there. The first email backfired, Showtime's bad, customers are annoyed, but instead of pumping the brakes, Brendan's right back to spamming CBD customers to combat the hate. Forget working on new material, forget grinding out sets on the road like a real comic. The solution: blast your Comedy Central clip to the same mailing list you just threw under the bus 3 weeks earlier, and if Bell and the team agree with the idea, Brendan gives it the thumbs up. Just like Hayes' team, Pure Spectrum's own is on Comedy Central. Check it out. The same desperate playbook, just recycled. It's how Brendan handles everything. From podcasts to stand-up to shady promo campaigns.
I'm sure it's a question also. The guy who's no longer with me, a business guy, comes to me and goes, hey man, there's this guy at YouTube. Again, I hand to God, I've never seen him, I don't see him. So this guy who works with me, right, doing this stuff, business manager, he goes, hey man, I got a call from this lawyer, I've known him a long time. There's this guy who's making thousands of videos, you've been bad-mouthing you, using your content.
He said, I don't care.
I go, I don't care, dude. Like, there's a million of them, what are you going to do? He goes, that's bad, man. He said you hate your kids. And I was like, well, okay. He comes back to me, dude, I'm telling you, I really think you should do something. They know how to pull out my heartstrings. He goes, he has a rap sheet where, he beat his son. It's on video on there. I'm like, whoa. All right, do what you got to do. And I was told, this is easy. It takes 3 months. It's still going on. That was really 3 years ago. It's still going on. But here's what people don't realize is, so they told me 3 months, and I don't know if they were in cahoots together, just getting money out of me or whatever. Now, me 10 years ago, I would never, you're never going to beat the internet. Internet's going to internet. There's nothing the internet's going to internet. And at the time, like, the initial cost, good amount of money, but again, at the time, whatever, your boy's blowing. So at the time, like, yeah, do what you got to do. Thank God, and people don't realize this, and even if he's doing, like, dragging it out, it's pro bono. I don't pay anymore. So whatever issue they have with it, I couldn't tell you what's going on with it. I couldn't tell you when it's gonna end. I know nothing about. I don't associate with them anymore. I couldn't tell you. I could not.
Now, here's where things get real familiar because it's exactly played before. Remember the lawsuit against Carl Swindell's, the one where Brendan sued a small YouTuber for posting clips from The Fighter and the Kid, only to lose, appeal the decision, and then somehow forget who was even running the case. It's that same energy. That whole situation gave us a front row seat to Brendan's beautiful line, claiming he wasn't involved, claiming then signing a sworn affidavit completely contradicting everything I just said there. It was honestly impressive. You know when lawyers tell their clients to shut the fuck up and don't say a word about the case? This is exactly why. Brendan managed to tell the whole world on his podcast that he had no control over Thick Boy Productions, manager and the lawyer were running everything, only to turn around and sign a document claiming he was in charge, totally informed, and called idea. Let's use the CBD database. Brendan approves the promo email, the plan explodes, Showtime's mad. Suddenly, Brendan wasn't aware, blames the team, acts confused. Fucking unbelievable. First with Swindell's, now with Pure Spectrum. Every time there's a business drama or public backlash, Brendan suddenly transforms into the most uninformed man alive. And honestly, it raises the same question I've been asking for months now. Is Brendan actually this clueless, or is he playing dumb to avoid accountability? Because based on these texts, the podcast clips, the affidavits, and every meltdown in between, one thing is certainly clear. No matter what happens, the people around Brendan are the first under the bus. This is just Kyle Swindell's 2.0, just with a CBD twist and another messages that made Brendan look like either master manipulator watching guys. I'll catch you.
AI is something different. It was a big deal in that time frame, but it's now become super cool.
There are 4 incontrovertible proofs that we didn't go to the moon. We just proved the moon landing was fake in one photograph. If the moon rocks are fake, no launch pad. The very next day, he's dead from faulty equipment. So when I make my way back to Nashville, I do not ask an 8-year-old question. That's my question. I want to know what I think I know. We didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
And so she's now seeing it.
And so the moon landing really is the poster child of conspiracy theories, right? No one thinks the moon landing. The director before Congress, and her number one example as to why they need to do censorship is people saying and then when it dawns, I found concrete proof that they weren't being false. I just, wept quietly. It's so sad when you realize they actually faked the moon landing. And more and more people are waking up to that. I saw before we began the clip of Joe Rogan, and I got a lot of positive feedback about that. I did Coast to Coast, I think 4 times, in one day, and our film, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, which you can see for free at Simperl.com. It actually out Gladiator after doing the Coast interview. But of those 2,000 emails that I got, now this is about 5 years ago, 9 out of 10 of them were, how dare you say such a thing, multiple death threats, multiple, with curse words in them. And then about 5 years ago, there was like a paradigm shift where 9 out of 10 emails were supported. And that really happened after the Joe Rogan podcast. People said, I assumed they always thought they were real. But after watching us discuss it for just 3 hours, they're totally convinced that they were fake. And then, of course, my book reaffirms that. The book is more of the backstory behind the production of the film. A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, flag of which is classified footage of faking part of the Apollo mission right in front of your eyes, with the CIA on a secret track of audio telling them how to fake it better. And that's what convinced me. I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt as long as possible. I was a big fan of the movies. I had a shrine to the you have your Egyptian artifacts here. I had like Apollo artifacts, pictures. I thought it was grandiose. So if I could go from that to being the leading spokesperson, did unfortunately falsify it. And what people need to understand is the falsification of the moon landing is so much more profound historically than if they'd actually gone. You see that? Either they went, they planted a flag, they came back, even though they can't do it today with 5 decades better technology. Oh, that was a close one. Glad we did that. Survived. Or the most powerful nation on earth that claims to be, the best example of truth and justice, lied about the most historic event in history and murdered their own people to cover it up and embezzled $250 billion from the taxpayers. And you would think that I've already had every revelation there is to have about the religion, but it's not true. They're still coming to me. I wake up just a few weeks ago, and I, of course, knew that they faked it 6 times. It wasn't like I didn't know that they faked it 6 times. What that meant dawned on me just a few weeks ago. If they had faked it once and then just never did it again, that's wrong. It's evil. But they faked it 6 times. They took the American people for suckers 6 times. That's how arrogant these people are. And they're at large. When someone robs a bank and gets away with it, they're just going to keep robbing it and keep taking more and more and more. That's why it's so important for the truth about this to come out. There are many people in Washington, at least now, who claim to be anti-corruption. But their number one tool, the most powerful tool to bring down the corruption, is to show the public that the federal government faked the moon landing. It will shock people. It will anger people. That's the best way to have a new government. Otherwise, they are complicit with the lie. And this lie is being taught to school children and college students. And the evil forces are winning because we're still propagating their word. I didn't mean it to be, but
it's a great summary of the situation.
I find myself getting more passionate about this because it's like, let's just say there's a bucket of water there because there's a leak in the roof, drip. And the next day there's one there, and then there, and I come visit you 3 years from now, and the bucket's students are still here. It's like, when are we gonna fix the roof? When is the truth going to come out? And as you know, they murder people to cover this up. That is so wrong. When is this gonna come out? That's why I keep getting more passionate about it as time goes by.
Right. Yeah, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the people that were murdered to cover this thing. First, can I ask you about the Joe Rogan experience? What was that like? I mean, the interaction between you and Joe, at times it seems like he was planning fake, and then at times it seems like he was kind of, questioning it. So what was the experience like with Joe, and what were his real thoughts on it?
Well, I'm having a revelation about that now too. The Joe Rogan experience.
Yeah,
It was an experience, and that normally when I do an interview, and I probably have done 300 of them, either like that was great or I could have done better. After that one, I'm like, what was that? When we produced our film, funny thing happened on the way to the moon. Fox bought it and they chickened out a few days beforehand. They footage of them faking the moon mission right in front of our eyes. The NBC did the same thing. New York said we're going to break the story nationwide. We have everyone in the news department said this on the moon. They got a threatening phone call from the federal government. Well, somehow, before the Fox special aired, which they changed to conspiracy theory, Joe Rogan had heard about it somehow. He did a lot of TV in LA. He sends me an email and said, "Hey, Mark, you're over in LA. Let me take you out to dinner." And I happen to be in LA. So they got the email and okay, so he picks me up the next day. We go to this, great restaurant. And he's like, "Bart, I know the moon missions are known for a long time. What can I do to help?" And then I'll hear from him for a long time. And asking me for years, why haven't I done the Joe Rogan show? Because it would seem that it would be important. Why hadn't I done the Alex Jones show at that time? The top two podcasters, it seemed like Robert Malone, who was one of the medicine people were taking who said, not to take it. And I don't, while I'm there, and I think it is, and he keeps acting like he thinks the movies are real. I'm like, what is going on? And so about halfway through, we take a bathroom break. I like yours better, so let's break. And I'm like, what are you doing? They didn't go to the moon. He says, "No, trust me. I'm doing this for a reason. There's a generation of people who don't know about this, and I'm doing it this way for their benefit." And I'm like, I had no clue of understanding what he was talking about. I disagreed completely. And then I get a review that you can read on the homepage of Sorrel.com of someone who saw the Rogan interview. And he said, "Look, I used to think it was real. After watching it, I know it's not. I read the book, it reinforced everything." And then I'm thinking, I guess Joe was right. I guess he's older and wiser than I gave him credit for. And apparently the way that he did it worked. Because we all the reasons why people still defend the moon now, of course, they know otherwise. He invited, and not something I would really be interested in. However, he took really good care of me when I was trouble with me. And for him, I said, okay, personally, I don't want to debate if the sky is blue. It's blue. For 3 hours for someone who thinks it's green. Plus, the person who thinks it's green is not open-minded, so it's a double waste of time. But if he really wants to, I agree. And then I would be debating really a victim of the deception. You understand? It's like debating a victim of someone who was molested rather than the molester. I'm like, bring up bring up one of these lying astronauts, but I'm debating a victim. I speak a victim. I used to think it was real. So maybe I'll go back because he said he wanted to have me back on. Maybe I'll do my first debate. I present the evidence on my website. I present it in my book, and I leave it.
Who was the person that he wanted to debate? You know,
Got the guy's name, but I could look it up and let you know. He's one of these scientists who thinks he's right about everything. And you know, you mentioned something early on. People who believe it, no matter what. I've said before, to a college professor teaching aerospace at prestigious universities. I showed him all this proof, which we're going to get into, why the moon isn't their fake. He said, look, Bart, there's nothing you can say that would make me recant the glorious moon landing. And then I said, well, what if you saw an Apollo astronaut on national TV tearfully confessing they were fake, they were shot at Cannon Air Force Base, just like Marcus Burrell says, I'm really sorry, please forgive me. The professor said he would still think he walked on the moon anyway. You see what we're up against? Whoever killed Kennedy, it's a tragedy. Whoever did 9/11, it's a tragedy. This is a positive lie that was giving people what they wanted to hear. You see, and I've come along trying to take away that sweet candy and give them the reality of the late in the network. They're not interested. Rather believe the lie. Bill Maher and Glenn Beck, glorious moon landings. They both do not want to give it up. I know America has gotten bad, but at least we went to the moon. Dr. Carlson said the idea that the NSA spied on the President of the United States' private phone call is as absurd as the moon landings being fake. Now, it's lie. So you haven't had me on your show either because he's afraid to go that far. That's why people need to know the truth all the more because it is that bad. You see that? And they're not knowing this historical truth. It's like having a cure for cancer that's being withheld. And they doesn't know just about America. It's about us as a species. We can't tell the truth to one another. It dawned on me, Matt, that the faking of the moon landing is denial. You realize that? The people who ran a dream couldn't admit that they put more than they could chew. And so they falsified it. They murdered people to cover it up. Our leaders are immature, robbing us of our money, which is being used to deceive us and pay the sound of CIA agents. We're killing our neighbors. They have to know it's because, and if not, we'll never get any better.
you're talking about Kennedy announcing in the early 60s, we're going to this decade, we're going to do it. And then he kind of painted himself into a corner, I guess.
That's right? Exactly what he said. In private tapes that came out, he said he wished he had never said it. He used an analogy of an old Irish folk story about these two brothers coming to a landowner's big wall, and of course they're challenging each other. You know, can you climb the wall? I can climb the wall. So the older brother takes the hat from the younger brother and throws it over the wall and says, "Now you have to go." And he said he did the same thing. He made this boast in front of the world. Now we're in trouble. And you know, NASA has never kept a schedule a single time in their entire history, except the most complicated mission of all time. They were ahead of schedule. Pretty remarkable.
Bill Platt was the guy who wrote in Quantity.
No, it was somebody else.
Oh, really? Okay.
I've talked to Bill Platt privately.
Okay.
He finally admitted to me he receives funding from NASA. So he's one of those people. I'm not even sure an astronaut confessing that he would recant the glorious moon landings. He has tunnel vision. You see, there are intelligent people like him. They are only intelligent. Prevents us from seeing the truth. You have to be willing to be wrong. Pride is simply the unwillingness, the willingness to be wrong. I think on the idea that the missions were fake as a 14-year-old. No one never thought about that. And the pictures, no one oil looks real up to a point, and then horizontally, it suddenly becomes out of focus and changes color. It doesn't look like a wall behind it. So you have to have an open mind, and those people do not have an open mind, and that adds all the more to the certainty that they're wrong.
I'll ask you a difficult question. Are you open-minded to the possibility that the landing did happen? Is there any, or is the evidence just so overwhelming to make it conclusive that the landing is fake?
Well, that's a good question, and the answer is I've already proven I'm open-minded. I used to have a shrine and follow me from location to location to location. The centerpiece of my room was the moon landing photographs. I've already proved I've had an open mind. They have not. I went from being the greatest fan to the greatest critic, and if that's not proving that I have an open mind and I'm looking at the truth, I don't know what will.
So Rogan, that's crazy that he approached you and he said, look, I totally think the moon landing was fake, it was staged, and then he got you on the show, and then he takes a different kind of approach to it, and only updates you on the approach at halftime during your answer race that caught you off guard a little bit.
Well, yeah, it did catch me off guard. It was kind of frustrating knowing what he really believes and acting like the opposite in reality. He said that there were strategic reasons why he did it, and apparently he was right, I was wrong. With that email that's on the website, the guy said, whatever happened in that experience of Joe Rogan, it must have worked. So maybe he's older than wiser than I give credit for.
He's a sharp guy. What have you done many other large podcasts? I saw you on Candace Owens.
Yeah, they did Patrick and David as well, and then Les Friedman asked me to do a show, but we can't seem to coordinate our schedules of being in the country at the same time.
Okay.
So,
You doing any others on this trip that you've got
I
right now?
did Luke Radowski yesterday. He's an up-and-coming podcaster. Actually, he's been around a while. Not too many people know about him. He has, I think, slightly less than 1 million subscribers on YouTube, but I like him. I don't agree with everything he says, but he seems genuine, open-minded, and looking for the truth. He'll criticize Trump, Trump's a fool for doing it that way, and next week he says, oh, Trump did this right. You can trust a person like that.
We want to dig right into the evidence, man, and to kind of the story.
I suppose.
Yeah, we might as well do it, right?
Yeah, let me just say, I wish the moon landings were real. The world would be a better place. Our country would be a better place. And if it weren't for both ride and it being a positive one, they would see the truth plainly. They watch the Joe Rogan show first their opinion because they're open-minded. And so the way that I look at it, Matt, there are 4 incontrovertible proofs that go to the moon. Each one by itself would prove it all. If your producer wants to bring up the picture where we have maybe you can prove that the moon landing fake with one photograph. Now I'm a filmmaker. A filmmaker should make fake films. They claim on the moon is 20 times brighter than the desert on Earth and Moon because they're so happier. So the last thing you would need in a picture of the moon would be electrical lighting. On the left is a picture I took outside in sunlight. You can do this yourself outside on a cloudless day. Look at 2 people standing, 2 trees, 2 telephone poles, which this is. And you can see shadows always run parallel. It's mathematically, scientifically impossible for shadows and sunlight to ever intersect. Impossible. On the right is a picture they claim was from the last mission to the moon, where an astronaut shadow is at 12 o'clock and a rock 5 feet away is intersecting at 90 degrees. That is an electrical light that is very, very close to those objects. That proves in a court of law that picture on the